Hey everyone, and welcome to Why This Beer, where we explore the stories behind the people and the pints in the craft beer world. This week, we're stepping outside of BC for the first time as we chat with Jeff Kurkowski, a seasoned brewer and former musician from Ontario. Jeff has spent years honing his craft at breweries of all sizes, all while touring North America with his bands. In this episode, we dive into Jeff's unique journey through the brewing industry and the creativity it takes to brew Czech-inspired lagers. We also explore the challenges of using Saaz hops, the art of working with pitch-lined barrels, and some cask culture. Plus, Jeff shares insights into British beer history, the evolving Ontarian beer scene, and what keeps him inspired when he's not brewing. This episode kicks off an exciting series of guests from beyond BC. So stay tuned for even more stories from across the craft beer world. Now, let's get into it with Jeff Kurkowski of Godspeed Brewing.
All right, welcome to another episode of Why This Beer. Join us as we discuss all the things that make our craft beer scene unique, coast to coast,
Whoa.
and the people that help sculpt these great beers. I'm Aslan Graves of Main Street Brewing, and as always, joined by Darren Binma of Neighborhood Brewing and Yellow Dog Penticton.
What's up?
And today we've got a special guest. I met him earlier this year out east. We've got Jeff Kurkowski from Godspeed Brewing. Hey Jeff.
Good. How are you guys?
Great.
Doing great. So we usually like to start this all out with kind of a little intro for those who don't know you. What's kind of been your journey in brewing? How'd you get into making beer?
Yeah, well, I started getting into beer, like good, interesting beer, back in the early 2000s. So I was like a lot of people, I think, a bit of a degenerate in high school. Used to just drink lots of garbage, strong alcoholic beer just for fun, playing in bands and stuff like that. And then I worked at the beer store for over 10 years, just as a customer service person while I was traveling around in bands and stuff. It was a good, easy union job, so I could leave for a month and come
flexible.
Back.
Yeah.
And so back then, the beer store had a pretty good selection of interesting beers, at least the one I worked at. And so my kind of gateway in was the Unibrew beers, actually, because they had, the Fin de Monde and Maudit and those beers, and Raftman, which I really liked, which they sadly doesn't show up in Ontario much anymore. Because at first I was like, wow, this is 9% and it also tastes good.
Yeah.
I had a similar thing. I feel like I was like, I'm like, you mean I can drink this and it's like the cost of a 40 of OE?
Yeah. So then I kind of, I've always liked cooking. I used to want to be a chef years ago. And when I get into something, I sort of deep dive into it. So I bought a few books. Probably the most interesting one was Randy Mosher's Radical Brewing, because I love history a lot too. And he, talks all about the history of beer and historical brewing recipes. So I was really transfixed by that. And that was my first encounter with decoction, because he talks about the decoction regimes in that book. So yeah, I did that for a while, just buying up any interesting craft beers that came into the LCBO from imports. And there weren't a ton of craft breweries in Ontario at that time. Great Lakes, Amsterdam, Steam Whistle, Wellington. I'm sure I'm missing a few. I can't think of off the top of my head, but and like
Flying
Bone
Monkey.
Shaker. Yeah, Flying Monkey's been around a long time too. And I started trying beers like Bone Shaker. Oh, and Muskoka, Mad Tom. Those were sort of the first IPAs that showed up there. But then one day my buddy was like, one of my best friends is like, hey, we should try making beer sometime. I'd never thought about that before. And there was only one homebrew shop that actually had a physical presence in Southern Ontario or in the GTA. And so we started off with extract kits, and then I quickly switched to all grain. Actually, the first beer we brewed was pretty sure it was a clone of Dogfish Head's India Brown Ale, which was interesting.
Nice.
Yeah,
Not the 120 minute? Wow.
Sorry?
Not the 120 minute? Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I could afford enough malt for that at that time. But
Nice.
and I kind of took it and ran with it, and it sort of fell by the wayside. And then I was just at a beer festival in 2013 at a local beer bar here that's been around for ages, called the Only Cafe. I send anybody there who comes to Toronto, because it's like cool vibe. They got a backpacker hostel upstairs, cool patio with resident raccoons that visit late at night. Always good, cheap craft beer selection. So they had a winter beer fest, and I was back there, and I was chit-chatting with some of the reps. And, I mentioned to one of them, I homebrew and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh, yeah, I know we're looking for somebody. I'll give you my business card. So he did. And I sent my resume and got a call from Phil, who was the owner of King Brewing at that time, and got a job there working the keg lines and CIPing tanks. And I actually worked with Matt Tweedy, who's a pretty well-regarded Ontario brewer. He owns Tooth and Nail Brewing in Ottawa. So I got to work with him for a little bit. Then he left to go move back to Ottawa and start planning that brewery. And so I got lucky. After only 3 or 4 months, I got bumped up to, mashing in and doing defiltration and just learning all this stuff really quickly. And I did that for about a year and a half. And that was interesting, too, because it was one of the only all lager breweries in the province. I think the only one other one would have been Steam Whistle at that time. I didn't know much at the time, but looking back at it now, it was a pretty solid first experience because we were using all Saaz T45s. It was the Budvar yeast. It was 100% Wireman malt. Wow. And we were fermenting cold. And, it's funny, there wasn't much of a lab, but all the process was there, like proper yeast flushing after primary is done. And so it was a really good first brewery to work at, I think. And
neat.
Yeah, and the decoction mashing, and I had been decoction mashing on my home brews too because I only had a single infusion system. But I like me and my buddy used to love a dark lager called Kostritzer. We used to get at the LCBO here. I think it's back again in cans, but it was in bottles at the time, and so we wanted to clone that. So I was making a bunch of different dark lager recipes, and just because I wanted to do like step mashing, but I never really liked infusion with water, and I always screw it up and miss my temperatures and stuff.
Miss
so
it.
Those calculations never work as you hope.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to punch in your exact cooler dimensions.
Yeah, what's the room temperature and all that. Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're at like 5 liters per kilogram.
Yeah. So that's kind of why I did that, just because practical purposes, and I like the process of it and stuff. But so after working at King for just under 2 years, I ended up leaving because the commute was really long, and I still wasn't like 100% sure what I wanted to do. So I went back to working at the beer store for a while, and I did a couple tours with some of my bands I was playing at the time across Canada and the Eastern US and such. And I came back, and I was just like loath to go back to customer service and stuff. So I just found a delivery driver job at Amsterdam Brewing, and then I got quickly moved up to DE Filter there because the operator just quit and never came back. And the brewmaster at the time, Ian, who's now the VP of the company, I think, whatever his title is, but he's Big Cheese there now. Nice. But he was friends with Matt Tweedy, and the head of the driving department had told Ian about me, and he knew my experience from my interview and stuff, and so they brought me onto that. So I got lucky again into quickly being thrust to a new brewery, and I worked there for just under 4 years.
Reluctantly going back to brewing.
Reluctantly going back to
filtering.
Filtration.
Sorry. Yeah.
But it was my way in. Not everybody knows how to use those godforsaken machines. So
I've never had to work on one. I sold one, but
they're it's a dance with the devil. They work really, really well, but when they don't work well, you're just up shit creek. So I worked there for quite a long time. Became one of the lead brewers there. Worked at the pub they have down on Queens Quay. I was lucky to get to work there during their big expansion where they replaced their 40-hec brew house, which I think was a McDonald's steel one. It doesn't really matter. It was an old 40-hec brew house, and we got a new Crohn's 100-hectoliter brew system.
Nice.
Which was really, really sick, and it was cool working with Crohn's engineers, and I liked the programming and all the different minutiae you could do to the boil. But after being there for just under 4 years, I kind of plateaued, I felt. And I decided, I like doing this, and so I decided to go to brewing school. So I went to the Siebel Doman's World Brewing Academy, and nice. Did that, which was an amazing experience. I'm lucky I did it. I have some friends here who did it like 1 or 2 semesters after and got screwed because of the pandemic. Because one of the best parts is like going to live in Munich for a while, and then at the end of the course, you do this 10-day booze cruise bus tour around Europe and go to all these breweries and malt factories and stuff like that. It's kind of like the Czech trip, right?
Yeah.
But even more just about the beer and culture and less about the here's some equipment you should buy from Casper Schultz or something.
Yeah.
So I did that, came back, did another tour with a band I was playing in across the US in between jobs. And then I got a job at a contract brewery near my house, which was pretty nice because they needed somebody, and I worked there for, it was called Common Good. I worked there for 2 years or so, and I got the job Collective Arts, which I believe makes it out to BC. Do you guys get Collective Arts out there?
Yeah, we get some Collective Arts every now and then. Yeah.
But
they got pretty big district.
Yeah, they opened a brew pub in Toronto downtown, and I got the job as the head brewer there, which was great. Got to brew a lot of interesting beers, lots of lagers, lots of hazies with every kind of new hop.
So from 100 hec brew system down to what's that, 10 hec?
Yeah, so I went from 100 hec down to a 35 hec down to a 12 hec. Back up to 25. Although we do having hec batches on the Godspeed one sometimes.
Yeah. Having the brew pub experience of like, especially with Collective Arts, is probably similar. Like I used to be at Steamworks for a bit, and like having the buying power of a bigger brewery, but brewing on a small experimental scale can be pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, we got great hops in because they're one of the biggest hop buyers in, I think, Canada. Just because the amount of hops that go into the big IPAs like Life in the Clouds and stuff. But the only crappy thing about that was I was there all during COVID. Nobody knew how long it was going to last. So the brew pub never really kind of reached its full potential.
Right.
And they ended up, I think, deciding. It was also kind of not a great ideal setup. Trying to have a brew pub in a building in downtown major city, it's like it's either going to be a good location, a good tap room, and a crappy brew setup, or a good brew setup but a crappy location, or something like that. So it was a good location but a crappy brew setup. Like there was no way to move stuff up and down the stairs except manually, and so all the packaging we did in the basement we had to carry up manually and use these third-party delivery. And so, long story short, they just decided to pull the plug on brewing there because I guess it just wasn't working out financially, and just run it as a tap room. So I got kept on there to help decommission the place, take apart all the glycol systems and the brew house, and ship it all out of the basement to whoever was buying it. But the same time, Luke, our owner of Godspeed, who I've been good friends with since 2015, when I was going, I played some shows in Japan, and my boss at the Amsterdam at the time, Ian, was good friends with him, and he got me in touch with him. He said, this guy will give you some cool suggestions of places to go and hook you up with some people who were metalheads and craft beer fans. And
nice.
So that was really cool. And then I came back and we started hanging out and blah, blah, blah. So he approached me and he said, hey, look, I'm making some changes in my life. Going to spend a lot more time in Japan with the family now because his wife is Japanese and he's got 2 young kids. He asked me if I would take over brewing operations there, which worked out very, very well because I had just lost my job. And so I had a few weeks off, and then I started working at Godspeed. Yeah, I've been there ever since.
Wow.
Sweet. When did you start there? When was this?
March last year. So I'm just shy of 2 years now.
Okay.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah. And then Luke officially moved to Japan for most of the part. I think it was in August last year or something like that. But he's back. He's back maybe 3 months of the year, 4 months of the year, depending. I was telling Aslan before you jumped on.
Yeah.
Spends most of the summer here because apparently the weather in Tokyo in the summertime is repressive. 39.
More of an indoor town.
Yeah, 100% humidity and stuff.
Gross.
Yeah.
Any with it seems like you toured quite a bit with music. Any like beer moments that you're able to have while you're on tour?
Well, I mean, I definitely was the guy who went off whenever we had spare time to go to whatever local craft brewery I could find. And the other
I
guys
definitely drug bandmates along to a few brewery tours that they were like,
exactly.
we just want Paps.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, the last band I was playing in, one of the other guys was a big fan of, not big fan, but interested in the fan of craft beer. And so he went, like, we were in Oregon, he and I went to Deschutes. I think the funnest part was just going to places like I never would have gone otherwise, like Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Boise, Idaho, and trying the beers there. Like, I went to Marble Brewing, I think it's called, in Albuquerque, which was pretty good. And then in California, getting to go to some of those legendary beer bars. Only when I had free time, but yeah, it's funny. There's like a lot of craft beer metalheads. the more I've been in this industry, the more you realize there's a lot of us out there.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm trying to think other really big ones. Not really. It's just more the experience.
It's funny
buying stuff all over the place.
Yeah, I'd played Yakima twice before actually going there for hop selection. And I was like, man, all of these are very juxtapositional experiences of Yakima.
Yeah, we played. I just played Portland, but then we drove to Idaho, and so we went through the Yakima Valley. I'm like, oh well, seeing hops for the first time in the Pacific Northwest, but not as a brewer, just as a musician driving through.
Different feel for sure.
But yeah, it's just fun getting to. I mean, you see places from a different side as opposed to being a tourist. You know, you're usually crashing on some local guy's couch or being in an area that isn't the super trendy hip downtown spot or whatnot. So, like, we went.
Got to figure out every locale's like utility beer.
Yeah.
Or lawnmower beer. Yeah.
It's like, what's the decent? I don't know. What's the one out in BC? Here, I guess it's like, if you want craft, like Steam Whistle is everywhere. Amsterdam 3-Speed or whatnot is everywhere in a pretty good price. But otherwise, it's all like old style and Pabst. Hip trash beers nowadays.
I feel like Vancouver doesn't have like a good utility beer, but like the island is like religiously drinks Lucky.
It's Lucky Lager.
Lucky Lager on the island,
and then
there's Kootenai True Ale.
Yeah, Kootenai True Ale.
Kootenai True Ale and Kokanee Gold.
Kokanee Gold, yeah.
Oh, so people do drink Kokanee out there.
Oh yeah.
I always thought it was just BS.
Yeah. Well, it is, but it's still.
I mean, Quebec's got water, Saint-Gant, right?
Yeah, they got Boreal and Tremblay, and I mean, Quebec's their own beast for sure, right? It's a very insular market by Canadian standards.
Yeah.
Do you have a beer, like, you've brewed at a lot of places, especially like contract brewing too? That must have been kind of neat to just like, to a certain extent, brew other people's recipes and be like, I probably wouldn't have done this, but let's do it and see what it is.
Don't get me started. We gotta keep it positive, right?
35 malts.
Yeah. You have how many different hop editions? Yeah.
Or like
I used to homebrew the India Brown Ale as well, actually. But do you have any beer, like, obviously Godspeed has their their brand, their identity, which is awesome. Is there any beers that like you have made throughout all of these places that you would like to revisit and that maybe don't fit in with Godspeed brand?
We did do a mild at Godspeed, which I really liked. It was based on kind of.
You tapped a keg for me when I was there. That was great.
Oh, did I? Okay, yeah. It was based on Harvey's recipe from the 1950s. So that was fun. That was one of the few beers where I've been involved in the malt bill and stuff. Luke and I worked on it together. Excuse me. He knows I like a lot of traditional English sort of stuff, but we're trying to kind of hone things in at Godspeed now and be a bit more focused because there's some times where we're just too many brands, I think, and kind of people are coming to us for the lagers and such. Our other two beers that are kind of our big movers are the Ochame and the Yuzu. So the Ochame is a green tea IPA, and the Yuzu is a saison with yuzu juice. And those are kind of the legacy sort of Japanese beers from the beginning when that was a much bigger part of the brewery. But I think my favorite beers I've done that I'd love to bring back that I don't know if we would do at Godspeed or not was when I worked at Common Good, the contract brewery, and the collective, I brewed this beer with black rice. because I was flipping
Okay.
through
cool.
one of my German technical brewing books, as one does, and and they had a section on the back on adjuncts. If you can believe, a German brewing book has an adjunct section.
It just says don't you this page intentionally left
Yeah.
blank.
Well, every one of those German textbooks is funny because they'll talk about the brewing situation and people will do this, but this, of course, is not permitted in Germany because of the Reinheitsgebot. They
Yeah.
just always got to tack that on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
so they
It's their
mentioned
disclaimer.
Yeah.
they mentioned it might be cool to do a beer with that. So I tracked some down, and it came in 2 kilo bags, and I remember milling it, hoping it would mill, and did a cereal mash on it. And the beer turned out really nice. It looked like a rosé color with a bit of
Yeah.
characteristic to it. I think I used Aramis in it or something. So I did that beer twice, and I really like it. You know, people are always enthralled by interesting non-traditional beer colors, be it a fruit beer or something.
Yeah.
Seeing that, it's kind of like a mind, because it's like you're expecting it to be fruity, but it's not at all. It just tastes like a bit more rich-bodied adjunct lager. So I like that beer a lot. We do a Hefeweiss at Godspeed, but it doesn't sell as well as the Belgian wit beer. So I think we're doing that instead, because
You can't have
I don't know
both.
about BC, but people here only drink wheat beers, it seems like, in the summertime. Nobody will touch that stuff.
Yeah.
in the winter.
Yeah.
So I mean, I like doing that. Super traditionally, I did one at the contract brewery I worked at where I can conditioned it. I used Saaz, so I did the super traditional way of using wort. Re-yeasted it with some water yeast, and that turned out really, really nice. It's probably the best Hefeweiss I've ever made. I've made a few of them, but I like. I like those super crazy traditional processes that like.
Are you doing like a ferulic acid rest and all of that stuff in order to?
I did one on that one, but I did a pretty extensive step mash, so I probably would have done the ferulic acid rest. But I do like 70-30 is what I like between wheat and barley malt.
Oh wow.
And there's actually more ferulic acid precursor, or is the ferulic acid is the precursor for Vorwald guaiacol. Anyway, there's more ferulic acid in barley than there is in wheat, apparently. So, yeah, I always thought, you think wheat beer and blah, blah, blah. But apparently it's the barley. So, yeah, but it would be a pretty extensive step mash, no pH adjustments. I don't think I did any water adjustments on there or anything like that. Because the Hefeweiss yeast, I like the Lallemand Munich Classic, partly because it's a Domen strain, and I went to Domen's. But also because it's super easy to deal with.
Yeah.
And we're big fans of dry yeast at Godspeed.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice when you're doing like something like a half where you might not do like multiple batches. So it's
you're not holding onto your half yeast.
And repitching so many generations, it apparently loses its kind of ester forming properties anyways, from what I've read. I've never brewed hef and repitched it consecutively enough to find out.
Yeah.
Because you're like, okay, we'll do Hefeweiss, maybe we'll do a Dunkelweiss, then do we do like a wheat pot or something, like a beer that nobody wants?
Yeah. Straight through.
I remember. Yeah. I remember brewing a Dunkelweiss at Powell Brewery, and that was definitely one of the slowest moving seasonals we ever.
Yeah.
It's like, this is you thought brewing a dark mild was a brewer's beer. It's like Dunkelweiss. Now that's like
that's up there with Scotch ale.
Yeah.
High flying style.
Yeah.
Nice. Before I completely finish this beer, maybe we should talk a little bit about is it Sklepnik? You'll have to pronounce it. Yeah.
Sklepnik? I don't know. We like having beers with unpronounceable names at Godspeed. Be it Japanese or Czech, you know. But I think it's Sklepnik. It means like cellar master or something like that, or cellar worker.
Nice.
But you can kind of see on the can here, there's these beautiful Pilsner Kell barrels kind of style, which you guys have 2 of at Godspeed.
Yeah.
Only 2 and you guys just Yeah,
maybe talk about the story of bringing them over and then like kind of the idea behind using it and why it is worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about it a little bit. That was our owner's child, really. So I guess he was on the Czech trade mission trip and I can't remember what year. Maybe it's 2018, 2017, something like that. And he's befriended the Coopers when we went there. I was disappointed we didn't get to go see the Cooperage at Urkel when we were there.
Oh no,
they did on that trip. Did you guys go?
yeah, we did. It was awesome. Sorry, not to rub it in.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've seen enough videos at this point. But anyway, so he befriended them, and he just asked if they'd be willing to make the barrels. And that's his biggest joke when people ask, how do you do that? He's like, I just asked. Nobody else asked before. And like,
no one would be crazy enough.
Yeah, they agreed. And so he ended up coming back, I don't know, a year later or several months later. I'm not sure how long ago. And actually stayed with them for a month at Urkel and helped build one of the barrels, and the second one the Coopers did by themselves. But then, shipping them across the ocean was obviously a bit of a endeavor. But I think, Luke just loves traditional brewing, and we love traditional brewing at Godspeed, and, it doesn't get much more traditional than lagering in pitch-lined wooden barrels. That's how everything was back in the day before, well, not necessarily pitch-lined, but you know what I mean. Yeah, and it's been an adventure ever since.
Yeah,
sweet.
So you guys, you used them for a bit, and then for a while you were having a bit of issues with them as far as the upkeep and finding people locally to essentially service the barrels. So is this the first batch since repitching?
That would have been one or two of the first batches since repitching. Yeah, I can't remember the specific one I gave you, but we generally keep. So we do primary in the CCVs, and then we will transfer it halfway through crashing. We usually slow crash a degree a day for the lagers, so maybe around 5 degrees we'll send it over. And now, like I said, we didn't have cooling on them at the time because the quotes were cost prohibitive for having. Originally, the idea was to have them built in a cool room, but they're on display, as Aslan saw at the brewery, and obviously we want them to be on display. It's crazy that people walk up and take Insta pictures in front of them and then walk out, like they don't even stay for beer or anything like that. At least when we first put them in. Now it's mostly just beer geeks. But so we were getting internal cooling coils installed in them, but obviously they had to be custom made, and that was a bit of a headache finding a manufacturer willing to do it. So those should be installed pretty soon, which will be nice. But till then, we were kind of just doing it. I mean, the wood is like the oak staves are 3 inches thick. It's supposed to hold 1 bar of pressure. We've still been because I mentioned to Aslan before we went live, we got some new hardware fitted on them too before we repitched. So we got like a racking arm put in and another bung on top to have the CIP and the cooling coils attached to them. But it's been a bit of a struggle to get them to hold the proper amount of pressure since then. Yeah. So between just those trials and stuff, we had a bunch of batches beginning, and then we kind of just kept them stored for a while under water with metabisulfites and a low pH until we repitched them. And we ended up getting a Cooper, Olivier Moreau from Montreal, or not Montreal, Quebec, Montreal area.
I was just looking at their Instagram page.
Super nice guy.
They do some impressive stuff.
Yeah, and so he came down to help with the whole repitching process. We ended up having to and he did the drilling of the holes for the hardware and stuff like that too. Like we had to get a block and tackle and winch it up off of one of the I-beams and then put it on because they're on these stands, which weigh about 100 kilos. These stainless steel stands. The barrels empty weigh 900 kilos, and full.
They hold 20 hex, right? Each
40.
They do not.
40 each?
Yeah, each. Yeah.
Jesus.
So it's stated as 40 because they're obviously handcrafted. They're slightly different, and it's closer to around 38, 39 or so. There's foliage in the bottom we don't get, but they're big barrels.
That's so wild. I've seen pictures of them. I thought they were like 10, 15 heck, but it's like these are huge. Barrels.
The same size. Luke wanted the exact same size as the ones in the Urkel cellar because they offered to make a different size or something. He's like, no, I want exactly what you guys have. And they
Wow.
when they sent them over, they did send some of their own proprietary pitch blend too. But I mean, proprietary. It's like
Yeah.
tar and paraffin wax, and it's easy enough to find some pitch recipes online if you just troll some old brewing books or articles from like the IBD journal from back in the day, or the Brewers Journal from back in the day.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, the repitching was a process. So they wheeled it out on the patio, and we built sort of a rail for it out of some 4x4s. And you have to heat up the inside to about 200 Celsius, and the pitch has to be reheated to about 200 Celsius. So then we got a blowtorch blowing inside, and then we rolled it out and dumped the old pitch out, and then dumped the new pitch in, and we just rolled it back and forth and turned it side to side. I think there's some videos on the Instagram. I'm sure Max took some. But
Jesus.
yeah, the first time, it actually went a lot better than I thought it was going to.
Just rolling around
messy.
a giant 40 heck barrel.
They're surprisingly easier.
It's like makes Donkey Kong seem simple.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely you wouldn't want any health and safety consultants
Going around
while
yeah.
watching people doing that. But yeah, with five guys, it was pretty easy to maneuver. Because of the concaveness of the barrel, you can spin it on its axis pretty easily. As soon as you reach the fulcrum tipping it, it's pretty easy as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an experience. The second one went a lot faster, obviously. And yeah, I don't know when we're gonna do it again. We're trying to decide. It's all just a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
Like at Urkel, traditionally they repitch it after every use, but you can't do that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of.
They must have quite the system.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just for tourists there now, right? So
yeah, I don't think they're like turning over those tanks very fast.
I don't even
impression
know if
I got.
actually beer in them. I mean, I've heard people claim there's just like a pipe that runs through them and stuff. Yeah, whatever. So that's the barrels. And then now what we've been doing, because they only hold around 40 hex, and the full batch we can brew, we have 50 hex fermenters. We have 6 of them. Is around 48. Originally, we were blending some of that in after transferring it to the bright tank, but then decided, why don't we, because the barrels weren't able to really hold pressure, we decided to kreuzen. So now we kreuzen all the batches of it when we transfer it to the bright tank, which is a bit tricky scheduling wise, obviously. Yeah. But it works well because it takes care of the extra 8 hex or so that we would otherwise kind of be figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
And it's just another cool traditional way of doing things, right?
Yeah, just add that natural carbonation and like kind of help scavenge any oxygen pickup or
yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Cool.
And so what do you feel because you've been brewing it on stainless, like you brew this beer on stainless and then you have the pitch barreled version. What is it contributing?
Anybody who says like the pitch is flavor neutral is a damn liar, and they've obviously never had a pitch beer, because it's, at least after a fresh pitching, it is pretty strong. It adds a lot of kind of resinous, kind of sappy kind of character to the beer, which is not to everybody's taste. I don't mind it. My coworkers misses the stainless version. But, yeah, it definitely changes it big time. The beers have been drying out a little bit more, or perceived dryness a little bit more. But yeah, like it does add
kind of almost like a tannic thing.
Yeah, well, I think it's partly because we haven't had the cooling, and obviously we're not filtering before transferring in there, so the warmer temperatures of the yeast might slowly dry it out a bit more.
Yeah,
but the main thing is just that kind of sappy, resinous character it adds to it, and a bit of that, kind of wood, like coniferous wood aroma in the nose. Yeah, I've read a lot of stuff historically where they talk about it, and people like that taste. So, it's kind of funny nowadays. At Urkel, they say, "Oh, it tastes exactly the same as when we barrel fermented it." So it's like, no, it doesn't. No way, not a chance. I refuse to believe that.
Yeah, the lore at Pilsner Urkel is like the reason why they do these traditional batches that they still do, and they're put in like the pitch line barrels is because that's like their quality control for like the huge operations, which of course is like total BS.
Yeah.
Unless they're listening. But it's a lot of marketing, right? And about like that's that they're still making a very traditional product. Like that's and I think it's cool that like Pilsner Urquell, like they have a staff that is like coopers. There's like
Yeah, that's
10
awesome.
people that work in a cooperage that work on these barrels, basically, so that the brewery is still in touch with like that tradition of things, even though it's like a massive operation at this point. Like they're still like kind of investing in that, like low tech kind of like making beer as well, which is cool.
Yeah, I think like it's important, and I always like seeing when breweries do that. Like I think it's like Sam Smith's in the UK; they still maintain coopers. There's a couple other UK breweries that still do coopers for wooden casks. Same in Germany. Like I know Uriga uses wooden casks, and a bunch of the Bavarian breweries do on occasion, like Eyinger and obviously Augustiner. Yeah,
It's kind of neat
nice
seeing
to
the
see. I mean,
gravity
obviously, it's great
cask thing
marketing,
start to
too.
come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we were doing
Like in
that.
North America, the classic thing.
Yeah, we were doing that a little bit because a good friend of the breweries, Michael Hancock, who's a retired brewer. He used to be the brewmaster of the brewery here called Side Launch, and he opened one of the first brew pubs in Ontario called Denison's back in the, I believe, late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway, so that brew pub was in partnership with Prince Luitpold of the Kaltenberg Brewery. I'm probably mispronouncing it, brewery, but they do the Koenig Ludwig beers, which is probably one of my favorite Hefeweiss in Bavaria.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know how Michael finagled that. Maybe you have him on the show sometime. He loves to talk. But,
Perfect.
He's also a mechanical engineer. Worked for Molson's for ages. Really interesting guy. But anyway, he had a wooden barrel that they had sent over, and it's from like the 1990s. It was just sitting in his garage, so I spent weeks trying to get this thing watertight again, and we served a few beers off of it, but it just would not hold pressure, so we gave up after a while. But it's super cool. I'd love to see more of that coming around because, I mean, Luke was talking about getting one from Urquell because the Urquell Coopers will make one, but it costs an arm and a leg just for like a small little barrel. It's hard to justify.
Yeah.
So
And it's just like work to maintain, right?
Yeah. The you've got a couple of gravity kegs, right? They're not wood, but Darren?
Oh, yeah, we have a gravity keg that we fill up every now. It's just like the plastic Lef one.
Oh yes, yeah.
But it's awesome. It's like if someone wants a cask, I'm like, perfect. This is the cask. Like I'm not doing
here you go.
IPA with pineapple anymore. Those days are done. But yeah, I love it. It's great, and it's such a it's such a conversation piece too. You put it up on the bar, and people are like, "Oh, what is that?" And like, "Oh, it's like the Pilsner, or it's like Oktoberfest and something like that." And we put it up on the bar every now and then, and it's nice because it stays cold a little bit longer.
Yeah, because
it's got that insulation, which I like, and it's carbonated, and I can fill it easily fill it. It's awesome. Like I don't have to fill it through the top with gravity like English ways. It's great. A lot of the time we just honestly we bring it out for collabs and do it then because people are the most appreciative of it then, and just put it out.
There's a bit of a cask scene here in Toronto. It used to be bigger. Like we have the Cask Days Festival every year that Bolo, which is one of the old school local beer bars in Toronto, has put on for years. And it was kind of like a bell curve because it started off really small, just on their patio, and then they had it kind of like a place called Heart House, which is on University of Toronto campus, and then it went to the Evergreen Brickworks, which was a big kind of revitalized old industrial area down in the valley here. If people don't know, Toronto's got a whole bunch of ravine systems running through it. But anyway, so it went from like this small little beer geek thing to like more of a party beer fest atmosphere of like 6,000 people coming, and then COVID came, and I think the family was tired of doing it at that large scale, and everything has become more expensive. So now it's just back down to their patio again, which is really, really nice. But I always like cask beer. If it's done well. A lot of people don't do it well, and even less people serve it well at bars, unfortunately. But there's one brewery here I really like going to called the Granite. They've been around for over 30 years now, I think. And there was
they
another
do cask ale
location.
for.
I'm sorry.
They've been doing cask ale for quite a while, like the whole time.
That's their thing,
essentially.
And so they
continued,
always keep the flag flying for the cask ale, and I always like their bitter. They have open fermentation, and they repitch their yeast. You're on like Gen 14,000 something or something like that.
Sweet.
Yeah, so and it's nice to see because it has a crowd. It draws people. But yeah, cask is definitely ebbing and flowing. I keep being like, oh, will British beer be the next thing after lagers? Like, I doubt it, but one
maybe.
When there's the CO2 shortage last year, is jokingly like, well, here's our time.
Yeah. Finally. Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, everybody learned about spunding, eh? Nobody's seen the spunding.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, wait, we can carbonate by just capping it off? No way.
Yeah.
And it's 100% pure, and it's free?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Seems like rocket science now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think BC cask like history was similar to, sounds like Toronto or Ontario. Yeah, really big thing for a while. There are lots of small cask festivals that turn into bigger cask festivals. I remember Central City used to do one in Surrey every year, maybe a couple times a year actually. And then
they had that
COVID,
like IPA
COVID
they would do all the time called the Roach.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I went to one place. The one time I was in Victoria, Moon Underwater, and they were kind of like English sort of vibes, from what I remember.
Yeah,
I think they had some. Yeah. And I was like, this bar is named after a George Orwell book. Awesome, or short story. Because at first I thought it was a weird name, and then years later I found it out. I'm like, that's sick.
Yeah,
yeah.
Aslan has a pretty rockin' cask program as well.
Nice.
I would say Main Street and then Moody Ales as well, and Port Moody are kind of the last that I know of like cask holdouts where you can like go pretty much every day and get cask beer. So yeah, I don't know. Now's the time to talk about your cask program a bit too, Aslan. We'll talk about it a bit in episode 1. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I sent you, Jeff, some of our mild?
Yeah, with the rye, I believe. I think.
Yeah, the rye bitter. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And,
but you sent me a mild too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but that mild, we make our own decoction sugar for, invert sugar for it.
Nice.
Which is a day in itself. That's like boiling sugar for 8 hours in order to get the color.
What do you acidify it with? Lactic acid
or? We use citric acid.
Okay.
At the start, and then start adding food grade lye after like basically 30 minutes once it hits the boil.
Yeah.
And then just like slowly step it up as it goes down. And like we're doing like 25 kilograms of invert sugar basically only for that brew now. I used to do it a bit more, but with your mild,
you're doing God's work.
With your mild, what was what kind of defined that?
We used
there's so many different ways to look at it. I feel like
we used Belgian candy sugar because couldn't source the invert sugar, didn't have any time or equipment to make it on.
Yeah.
So that was the next best thing, some sugar with color and character to it. That was easily attainable. I did some deep dives in invert sugar a while ago, and I just started ending up blending black treacle with this is on a homebrew scale. Blending black treacle with just regular like Lyle's golden syrup. It's not as inverted as full proper invert sugar, but I found some Ragus Specs, which I think is the only sugar manufacturer left in the UK that does it on industrial scale for brewers. So I'll do brewers blocks. I know Harvey's uses them, and it's invert sugar mixed with a bunch of stuff. But the interesting thing, as I did more research, is like there's all these different proprietary invert sugars, and some of them have non-fermentable sugar like maltodextrin in them and stuff like that. And I tried that on the mild. So I had brewed that recipe at home. It wasn't exactly the same one because we rationalized it for a large scale because, you don't want partial brown malt that you're not going to do anything with for a year.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I got it to dry out pretty well. And then I I put some maltodextrin in with the priming sugar when I put it in a cask, and it worked really, really well. It gave it like a nice body and stuff. And like,
Neat.
there's all these. I mean, you've read the Barclay Perkins blog, like all these proprietary sugars from back in the day. It's like I'd love to know what they were and see the specs on
Yeah,
them.
exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm sure somewhere
Mild
in
has
some
got
archive. But
it's funny because all of these like beer styles and stuff, mild especially, is just like directly influenced by what was going on politically at the time. Like
yeah,
the
taxes.
I yeah, I do a World War One era mild, so that's like all of a sudden barley was being held for like saved for food and feeding livestock, so they started using corn and using invert sugar because it cost more in like coal to do higher kilned barleys.
Yeah.
So they're like coloring with caramel.
Yeah, and like the gravity dropping, like pre-World War One, mild was not a low ABV beer. It's like 5-6%, and you go even
up to like
back.
9.
Yeah, in the mid 1800s, it was even higher. Well, there were all the different X's, right? Higher number of X's, the higher the mild. It's always funny looking at beer styles as like a static thing. It's like anyone that's been around for a long time has changed in innumerable times over the years, especially in a long-standing brewing tradition like England, where it's been so affected by tax and legislation, so they put more malt tax or more beer tax or however it was done there, and then the brewers, instead of raising the price, just dropped the gravity. Because I think I don't think it was until the 70s or something that they had to state the ABV for beers in the UK, something like that. Wow. Camera posted stuff showing them. I guess they did density meter checks or something like that to try and force the brewery's hand.
Yeah.
All this politicking over beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Important things. Yeah, it should be that again. That should be an election issue.
Yeah. None of this crap we're dealing with nowadays. It's just back to beer legislation.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I heard Reinheitsgebot too was like a similar like food preservation thing. Like that.
Yeah,
that was kind of why
people around the Reinheitsgebot, and there was a bunch of other ones, and it didn't even apply to all of Germany until I think unification or something like that. In 18,
it was only Bavaria.
81 or 70, whatever it was. And even then, I think it was only early 1900s when Bavaria forced everybody else in Germany to brew by the Reinheitsgebot.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots.
There is like a pre-Reinheitsgebot beers that are like pretty unique and interesting. Like
like the Northern German brewing tradition was like more akin to modern day Belgian one, like with your Adam beer and your Lichtenhainers and the Goza and the Berliner Weiss, all these sour kind of low ABV wheat barley beers. Like some of them are wild.
Yeah.
Like Adam beer is just the most ridiculous thing. Like it kind of. I was looking at. There's a really good beer blog. I like. What is it? Daft Ite or something is the guy who wrote the book on Vienna Lager. If you guys have seen that one, Andreas Kennemeyer. Anyway, his blog is cool because he's an Austrian guy who. So
he's got the historical Austrian and German beers, right?
Yes, that same guy.
Yeah.
Same guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, he made a post recently on Adam beer, and he found this information describing how it was made. It's just like OG of like I can't remember Plato, but it was like 1.126 or something like that gravity, and finished at like 1040 or something like that, like a modern day pastry stout. 9% alcohol, aged in barrels, tons of hops. Like doesn't sound appealing.
Yeah,
that's wild. It's like a modern day pastry stouts, like you said.
Yeah, with such a high finishing gravity, like
with tons of fusels though, probably.
Oh, probably. Even like back then, like they didn't even finish fermenting at the brewery. They bung it up and send it to the publican. The publican would bottle it, or just like wild how much different it must have been back then. The quality of the beers and stuff.
Just like the amount of sour beers essentially that like were just like that's because the beer sat around for long enough to sour.
Exactly. I mean, it was all mixed cultures. They all had lactic acid or pediococcus or something like that. sooner or
Yeah.
later, or Brett, which also produces acetic acid. So
Yeah.
that in an oxygen-rich environment, anyways. Yeah, wild stuff. Like Brett used to be a big part of British character, and then people stopped liking that taste.
Yeah.
There's hardly any
Yeah.
British beers with it in it.
Yeah, they say Orval is actually one of the most traditional English pale ales.
Oh, totally. I've had that
In
conversation
a
with
way.
many people. Yeah, 'cause it's like dry hopped, and then the Brett and everything. I mean, Belgian brewing tradition is just archaic British brewing tradition for the most part, mixed in with their own weird legislature because of taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember reading
Yeah.
that's why they have all the really strong beers there, because like the tax was on your size of your mash tun or something. So
Right.
they would make a small batch and then sugar it back. And gin also had a huge tax on it, so that was kind of to replace gin for people.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Well, it sounds like you also went on the trip to the Czech Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go on that last year then? And
It was this year.
how was your experience there? What did you think of Czech drinking and brewing culture there while you were there?
Yeah, well, Czech drinking culture, second to none, except maybe for the Bavarians. But me and some buddies went to Munich. It was nice because there was a lot of Canadian brewers on there that we all knew each other. There was a big Toronto contingent. And so me and a couple good buddies went to Munich beforehand, and Augustiner Beer Keller opened that day, and it was great. One of my old classmates from Siebel lives in Munich now and works for Polliner, so he came out to meet us. Yeah,
Sweet.
kind of shot ourselves in the foot there, because then we went to Czech Republic, and like the beers are like, I'm not a huge hater on diacetyl like some people, but some of those Czech beers are just strong in diacetyl, and I don't particularly like my lagers. They love it. Like, it's wild how everybody there shits on Budvar. Like, that's like crap beer to the Czechs, and they all love Pilsner or Kel. And it's like, well, Budvar has no diacetyl in it. So just learning how, like, people think lagers all just, fizzy yellow liquid. And there's so much diversity in the lagers they make there, and varying levels of quality, and some of the crystal malt in it. Like the Svetley I sent you, that's got a bit of crystal malt in it.
I have it in front of me, and it's like, I was surprised how dark. Like, it's lighter than it looks on this camera, but it's like pretty golden.
Yeah,
color.
It's got some Cara Munich 2 in it, I think.
Yeah.
2 or 3. Excuse me. But yeah, there's a lot of beers like that, and just like even varying levels of carbonation, and it's like very insular, except for like the 2 big brands. You never would have heard of a lot of these breweries there without going, I think. I mean, maybe people who live in Europe. But yeah, the stark contrast of like the German beers, which are like for the most part austere and extremely clean, and I love them, and then the Czech beers, which are all over the place and a lot more idiosyncratic, and I loved some of them, and some of them were like, But I mean, obviously, everybody's taste is everybody's taste. But I really like the passion they have for the beer there. Like, if you look at what the tapsters are doing there, and they're not even making tips compared to what our like servers do here at bars, like how they hand wash every glass and scrub it and take so much care. It's like, you couldn't give a server enough tips to get them to do that nowadays. I've worked at some places where it's hard enough to get them to hold the glass on the glass rinser down for more than 2 seconds. Yeah, so that really stuck with me, like how much it's appreciated, and people like are fans of the tapsters and will be like, oh, I only go to this pub because this pub has the best tapster who serves it right. And if the tapster changes, it's like, I going back to cask ale for a while, I was talking to my coworker yesterday, and I said the side pull taps, I kind of see some like parallels between that and like cask beer, because despite what the Czechs and Luca would have you believe, almost everything was side pull taps back in the day, because it's just a ball valve. It's super. They use them in Scotland, they use them in Germany, etc., etc. And but as you guys know, I'm assuming you've both used the side pulls. Like, it's not idiot proof. You have to know what you're doing. Whereas the modern tap, it's a plunger, open, close. It's idiot proof, and it's kind of like cask versus keg. I think one of the reasons it won out is because any person can hook up a keg and ask to be broken by the server and the seller. So I think it's just like, a march towards less skilled jobs or something like that.
Yeah, we have a couple liquor taps as well, and it's just like, yeah, you're just constantly training, always training. It's never like, okay, now everyone knows how to do it properly. It's like, no, you get someone new.
And I've
especially in the serving
people...
industry, it's like someone's new every month.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
okay, yeah, you're just like, okay, yeah, so this is how you do it every time.
We're lucky we've got some servers who've been working for us for a while that like working there, but yeah, it's like anywhere else. There's always new people coming in.
I was gonna say, Jeff, when I was at your brewery there, you had, I think it was one of the taproom guys was helping out in the back, which is kind of a unique thing. So that's like has a tie to the product, but specifically your guys' Risane pour. I don't think we had one, but the amount that we saw go out was quite a few over the time when we were sitting in the bar. And like, but it's also one of the best executed ones I've ever seen. And I've struggled to try and do it myself. Like, yeah. What's the secret to a good Risane pour?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so Colin's still working with me. He's working with me more and more in the back now. He's an avid home brewer, but he loves doing the Risane. And I think it's just like, you just got to do it with the foam, right? You have to be careful with your densities. Like, we've tried to get the Tamave dark lager to a low enough density that we can put it on top, but the Sklepnik and the other Czech beers are drying out so much, especially with the new malt we're using, that it has to sit on the bottom, unfortunately, because it always looks more striking with the black on the top and the white on the bottom. Or the
because there's a few people that do serve it that way, right? Like, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but I've seen a few photos here and there where it's black on top.
Yeah, I don't think there's any hard and fast rule, but Colin has now started to do a triple decker.
Wow.
Where he does with 3 different beers, and he's very proud of that. Now our owner wants to put it on the menu.
Dang.
That's the thing. It's like he's the only staff member.
That's a 20-minute pour.
Yeah, exactly.
For those that don't know, I just jump in, like, for people that don't know what we're talking about, which now we've gone to the very niche part, is like, that's a beer that has, one beer. It's 2 beers in one glass, but like one's on top and one's on the bottom because they're different densities. They're going to be stratified. So it's a nice, like, lighter color beer usually, and a darker color beer or amber as well.
Yeah.
What's in the triple decker? Or do you sandwich one dark beer in the middle? Because that'd be pretty.
He's been doing it with like
impressive.
I think the Khmelova Brigada. I think I sent that one to you guys too. That one, and then
that's what I've got right now.
Yeah, that one, the Svetli, and then the dark lager is the 3 he's done. Just based on
so it's like a Neapolitan.
Yeah, exactly. He's so proud. He's showing everybody with pictures and stuff. But yeah, it's one of those things. As soon as somebody sees it in the tap room, 5 other people want it. Like we've done Kolsch service a few times, and I got my brother-in-law and one of his coworkers, who's a German guy who used to be a furniture maker apparently, and they built us really nice Kolsch trays with scrap wood they had around their shop, which happened to be like ash and walnut, I think, or something.
Oh wow!
And they have like a laser
this old thing kicking around.
Yeah, they've got like one of those laser burners that'll burn words into wood. So they did an amazing job. And so we were doing that. And we're joking. It's kind of like a Godspeed pitcher because it holds about 2 liters. But yeah, you see one of those plop down on a table, and everyone, what's that? And all of a sudden, somebody else wants that. That's kind of what we've been focusing on more and more, is some of the more traditional stuff. And we try and do a lot of like events to highlight certain things and also to draw people in. Because I feel like in the post-COVID world, at least in Toronto, people need more and more of an excuse to come out and go to your bar, as opposed to before, where people would just go out more freely. It's probably a financial thing, I'm sure, for people just worrying about their health more, because 2 beers a week, right?
No, that's propaganda.
Yeah.
We don't acknowledge that. We don't acknowledge that here on the show. It's the science hasn't been proven.
That's poppycock. It's like up there with phrenology.
One of our upcoming guests has a pretty good theory on some of the new regulations.
There you go. A little tease.
I'll have to listen to that.
But
we're conspiracy theorists podcast now coming up.
You touched on it quickly. The You're gonna have to Chimalova Brigada.
Yeah, Kamalova Brigada. I think it is. I'm
Kamalova.
sure I'm pronouncing it wrong too.
But hoppy Czech style lager. That's this one here. You've got that
cool.
beautiful heritage photo.
Yeah, that was from the Czech
was that
Hop Museum.
Bohemia hops?
Yeah, that photo, I think it was either from Bohemia Hops or the Czech Hop Museum, and they granted us permission to use it. So we've used a couple of them on some of them. Yeah, that beer used to be sort of more just like a hoppy lager, where we just like, it was almost, I hate to use the term, but like an IPL kind of thing.
Right.
But now what we decided to morph it into is to just sort of be a regular Czech lager, but with different new Czech hop varieties.
Cool.
So
so this one's Premiant?
Yes, this one's Premiant, yeah. And we were supposed to brew a beer, in collaboration with some of the Czechs who came last week. Lenka, who's the brewer. Maybe you met Lenka when you were on the Czech trip. She's the brewer at Proud.
At Proud, yeah.
Yeah, it's been rebranded like Electrana Brewery or something.
Oh,
so she came to brew with us.
Sweet.
And we did a collab with her, and it was supposed to be with Saaz Comfort, which Bohemia Hops expedite shipped over, and we got held up at the border. And so we needed it last Friday, and it showed up late yesterday.
Perfect.
Or not yesterday, Thursday.
So there'll be a new seasonal.
Yeah, exactly. So now we got to figure out what to use that. We might make another Brigada with that one. But...
Nice. What other versions have you done, or is this the first one?
That's the first one where we've really highlighted using a single Czech hop. Before, I think Saaz, it had maybe a bit of Kozbek in it too, from what I remember.
Okay.
So yeah, this is kind of a new thing. We're sort of rebranding it as like a showcase of new Czech hop varieties.
Yeah.
What's kind of characteristic that you're getting from Premiant that you feel like? I can read the notes on the can, but I know you probably wrote the description on the can before you made the beer. So.
Oh, I did write the description on the can. That's our social media.
Yeah.
Mine would be like short and concise, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like a lot of new ones. We ended up using Agnes in that other one, the collab with Lenka from Proud, and
yeah.
I find it just like a little bit more amped up Saaz, to be honest. Like maybe a bit more lemony. Like of all the newer Czech hop varieties that I've used, I like Kozbek the best because I think that does have some nice citrus character. The Premiant is more just, I think it's a dual purpose hop, but I think it's bred more for bittering than.
Yeah, I think they would call it like a bittering hop.
Yeah.
For us, it's like a North American.
Yeah,
this is like a normal amount of alpha acid.
7 alpha.
Yeah, it's like wow, 7 alpha, crazy. Yeah.
But I think it's just a little bit more amped up Saaz, to be honest. Maybe a little bit more of the herbal character. But that beer was interesting. It was all just mash hops and whirlpool hops. Luke likes doing. Our owner likes doing weird combos like that sometimes, just to see what comes out of it. Remember
blending some old worlds that are now new world techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
it's
the
funny.
mash hopping thing. It's funny how it's like traditional in German brewing, but now is hyped up for hazy IPA brewing.
Yeah, the bound files and stuff. And apparently Saaz relatives are supposed to have a lot of that, but we're obviously not using any yeast that can cleave those bonds and free it from the is it glucose or whatever it binds to? But
yeah.
That's
I think cool. I think a lot of lager yeasts do have a component of that.
Beta lions or whatever it is, or something.
Yeah, beta lions. Yeah, that's it.
They definitely can. Yeah, I find it, especially in New Zealand hops, for sure. There, it definitely comes. In my experience, my anecdotal experience is definitely you get some those thiol components coming out for sure. Yeah. Even with just normal lager yeast, I mean, you can use the Kozbek punch as well to really amp it up. But there's definitely something coming out of those hops, especially depending on what hops you're using. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done it. I'd love to do a side by side with mash hops and without. But I think one of the reasons we do the mash hopping is because there's a huge load of hops. So
right. What are your? Sorry. Oh, sorry. What are your normal? What's your normal dry hopping regime? I'm having this slightly Lazac, and it's very Sazy.
Yeah.
Do you just like, are there many editions for that kind of beer as opposed to the
I'm
one
trying
you
to
just
remember
talked
off the
about?
top of my head. That one has mash hopping in it, and I think there is. We use a bit of extract just for to up the bittering, especially with how Saaz has been recently, because that beer is 100%
Yeah.
Saaz otherwise.
Yeah.
Just with a bit of extract to get it to the IBUs we want. And then there's, I think, a 60-minute edition, a 7-minute edition, because our owner loves 7 minutes.
Yeah,
Cruel.
there's a
Cruel.
Yeah, I know. It drives me nuts, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes.
5 or 10. Pick a
Yeah,
lane.
come on, man. But and then there's a whack load. There's 8 kilos in the whirlpool, so we do a pretty hefty whirlpool edition.
Wow.
8 kilos? Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Have
This is for a 50 hect batch. It's
Okay.
20 kilos total Saaz hops, and then the extract.
Yeah.
So for the past 2 years, Czech hops have kind of, due to environmental situations, not been the best. Have you branched out into other, like, how have you been compensating for that?
We just use Saaz. We
Just
haven't
use
branched-
Saaz, yeah.
We buy direct from Bohemia Hop now.
Yeah.
Sorry, David Carrier, but
Yeah.
so we get some pretty good selection. Our owner Luke is really good friends with Jan from Bohemia Hop, so they treat us pretty well.
Nice.
It's still pretty low. Like, I think the size we have now is like 2.7% alpha acids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll just adjust it move the addition a little bit, or add a bit more extract or something like that. But we haven't really messed around with any different hops for those core beers like Sputnik or Spetley.
Yeah.
It's adjusting those 5-minute additions to 7. That's the that's the secret.
Get another half IBU.
Yeah. Well, I'll try and speed up the whirlpool, because our whirlpool takes a little bit of time to cast out.
Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of isomerization still happening there as well.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because it's not dropping much below 100 degrees Celsius in the time it takes us to cast out.
Yeah. It's funny, like, as you say about the hop crop of Saaz, is that, it sounds like Bohemia Hop Group and lots of the other co-ops there are breeding new hops, right? New hop varietals to basically be like more like drought resistant, and like better, and like, and crop, and just like more hops per acre kind of thing. And so, but like every new hop variety is like either starts with an S or is like Saaz something, because the brewers there are so tied to Saaz that they don't they were like, they wouldn't be caught using like something as an alternative. It's like such a no there. So like everything is like Saaz Shine and Saaz Comfort, and I'm sure like when they eventually find one that they're happy with, like that will just be the new Saaz. That's my hot take, because like I think that's where this has to go. Like, we can't, like, this hop won't die out. Like, people will still be brewing with Saaz. It's just like, it's gonna change overall. Like, it just we can't have like one alpha Saaz.
Yeah, it's gonna grow the way of Stristle Spalt. I mean, look, nobody uses Stristle Spalt much anymore, and it's all like barely above 2, if that. The last few times I've used it, and we've used it. We used to use it at Godspeed, but now we just use Saaz instead. But yeah, I remember talking to them when I was there and asking about, because some of them are talking about irrigation now, because nobody in Europe irrigates really.
Yeah, they do. They put sprinkler heads on the top of the trellises, don't they? Is what I was hearing from somebody.
I didn't hear about that. I can't comment. One way.
It sounds like some farms are irrigating and some are not.
Yeah,
from my experience.
But I know, like, they were talking about having, because one guy told me one of the problems is like, so they gotta get their water from the rivers, but there's not a ton of them in the hop growing area, I guess. And when they do need the water is when it's at its lowest, and the government puts restrictions on removing the water from them, so they can't even use that to irrigate with. Yeah. So they were talking about having, like, I guess, irrigation pools where they just collect water throughout the year or things, but there's definitely a lot of talk about it just because of the past number of years' harvests are just brutal in terms of the droughts they're getting. Like, when we were there in April, and it was scorching. Like, I remember the first time I went to the Czech Republic, I was in Prague in early April in 2012, and it's like -4 degrees in the evening and stuff. And now we were there, and it was in the mid-20s the entire time, and no rain at all for the most part. Yeah,
Nice.
it's crazy when you actually experience it. So this is early April, and there's tons of rain,
Yeah.
or tons
Yeah.
of heat, I should say. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely hitting them. Like climate change for sure is hitting those regions hard for sure.
Buy more British hops. They don't need irrigation. They got enough rain there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Save the fuggles.
So yeah. There's have you tried that Czech grown English varietal Most?
Well, moss. Yeah, I did some trial batches for Charles Ferrum when I worked at the Collective Arts Club. It's interesting. It's got a lot of like dark fruit, black currant. I put it in a Czech dark lager, and I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it's going to catch on. I think it's like too weird for a lot of people to grasp, like a English hop grown in Czech Republic with a Czech name that's super high alpha, like 10 point something percent. And I think it's
Yeah, I
cool
think
project, but
yeah. I'm just putting this together. I think we might have been on the same hop round table
maybe, yeah.
like years ago.
Yeah, it would have been like 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. For Most. But yeah, we brewed English blonde ale with Most, and it's got this crop year has some incredible red fruit and like kind of like vanilla cream, like candy kind of character to it. It's like, oh, I could actually see this as like a complimentary like New World hop.
Yeah, some of the English hop varieties are interesting. I like them. Like I've used, I used to use Jester a bunch in Amsterdam. We did an ESB with Jester, which was pretty nice.
Nice.
Harlequin, I've tried a few beers with that one that I thought were really nice. So it's cool that they're doing stuff there. I don't want to see the English hop industry die because it's got such a standing awesome tradition. But yeah, it all depends on the market, I guess.
Yeah. So, as this like to wind down the show a little bit, what excites you about the Canadian brewing industry these days? Like, from your perspective, and like where can we improve as an industry? I mean, Ontario is probably very different than BC, so don't want to assume it's all the same.
The Ontario industry in general has come a long way. Like we used to always consider ourselves lagging behind in BC and Quebec. Quebec for a long time was, when I first started getting into craft beer, at least like the real craft beer mecca for the country, because Judiciel, obviously, which our owner at Godspeed used to work at. And now you've got some newer breweries, but back then it was all kind of Belgian focused stuff, and Rousse and Blanche and stuff. But I think because they had the whole convenience store system and they're just so proud of their own domestic products, there really was a lot of like focus, and those breweries could do pretty well. But I think Ontario is really caught up. I think Canada in general is caught up to the US more and more. Like we always used to say here that like, oh yeah, we're like 5 years behind the States and stuff. And I think that gap is really, really closed, and we're pretty much on the same train as them. Obviously our market is 1/10 the size of theirs, but we've got all the hot trends up here that I'm seeing in the States now, instead of like those only showing up 5 years later now, especially in Toronto. You get a bit more slow pace in the more rural areas where the breweries are just doing your blonde ale and your porter and maybe a hazy IPA or something like that now. I mean, I think the biggest problem we have in this country is all the different legislations in the different provinces, and just how ridiculously annoying it is to move beer between two provinces. Like we stopped exporting to Quebec for a while just because it was such a headache. And it's like, it's right there. We share a border. So like, if it's a beer event or something like that, we'll take a keg across the border ourselves. I mean, border. It's the same country, but
I mean, it's the same here. Like, I mean, we don't get Godspeed out here. Obviously you're a smaller producer, but like, but there's also just like, we don't get anything from Alberta, really, even like
really.
And likewise, like there's not a lot of BC beers that go to Alberta.
So it's very insular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we're
That
lucky
is.
in Toronto because we're surrounded by a lot of big U.S. states. So there's a lot of, not that we export much to them, but like, people could go down to Vermont, big state for beer, obviously. New York back in the day, it was all about Southern Tier and Brooklyn Brewery when we used to get those beers a lot now. And Chicago, obviously, amazing beer city. So
Yeah.
I think that's really helped. But yeah, as far as having more open avenues with less bureaucracy, I think that hurts us in Ontario and a lot of other provinces as well.
Yeah.
It's like, man, it's the same country. Why do we have to go through all these hoops to ship a keg or a pallet of beer to a province, next province over? Like, let alone.
Yeah, totally.
It is funny though, like you mentioned the we've caught up to the States. Like I think in the past year, I've had two situations, one of which was like 2 weeks ago. It's like infatuation with American breweries making Canadian lager.
Yeah,
we were talking a little bit about that. Like I can't even think of like what I'm like. You tell me what Canadian lager is like. What?
Yeah.
Like blue.
But I guess a 5.5% adjunct lager. Yeah, something slightly higher than 4.
I mean, it's just another thing tacked onto a front of a name, just like IPA this or IPA that. Now I think people are going to do lagers,
well, and that was the other thing is Charlie Cummings. He just put out that book, Maybe Craft Beer Isn't For You. Like an anecdote about his career in craft beer. But he was brewing a nano IPA. And he was like, Thanks, Canada, for this style. And I'm like, nano IPA, what's that? I was asking him. And he's like, when I was in Quebec, there was just like a ton of IPAs that aren't session IPAs. They're like sub 3% nano IPAs.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So there we go. There's the new Canadian style for 2025.
I mean, I feel like we do a low ABV beer called Baby Svetli, which is like 1.5%. And it did well for a while, but I think now with the rise in the non-alc stuff, those kind of styles are sort of getting lost. Like people either want no alcohol at all, or they want alcohol. They don't want something that's like sub 2.5 or sub 3%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like either a complete non-alc or a 19.2 ounce can of like 8% IPA.
Yeah. How is it out there? Is like everybody jumping on the non-alc train in BC because it's pretty popular here right now.
I think it's same kind of thing. Yeah, a lot, especially more in like January, February. People are getting into it. I think the one thing that is separate in my experience of Ontario versus BC is that there's a lot of bigger Ontario craft breweries that are like really hitching their wagon to this, and you're starting to see that now in BC, but actually slower growth in that. Like there's people that are doing it, but people are pretty slow actually to get to bigger products that are out there. Like there's Phillips that's doing it, and Central City that are doing a lot of volume of those, but that's kind of it, right? That's like doing a lot.
Yeah,
we talked about Powell's doing it like with their dry goods, but that's a couple pallets here or there. Like no one in like a big amount, I would say. So a lot of people here, in my experience, are turning to just like the bigger like Athletics of the world.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
All the big breweries. Because like a lot of those beers have been very popular in Europe for a long time for various reasons.
Yeah.
Like a place like the Czech Republic where zero alcohol blood driving laws and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the best ones are from that area. Like there's a few, like here Collective Arts makes one, Bellwoods has really made a bunch as well, and they're well received. Yeah. But the nice thing about those breweries is they have the size and the equipment to do it properly. Like my biggest worry about the whole non-alc thing is a lot of people are cowboying it, at least that I know locally, and they're not pasteurizing it. And they don't realize, like, hey, man, this isn't a beer, it doesn't have the things that make it shelf stable. It's like higher pH, no alcohol, lots of residual sugar. Like, it's like, it's fruited sours all over again.
Yeah, so, you thought alfalfa sprouts were bad.
Yeah.
So, I always tell people it's like you're packaging milk, right? Almost, but not quite as insane. But like all the things that keep all the things about beer that make it safe to drink for a long time after, like, don't exist in non-alc beer, right? So
Yeah,
the only thing like you can add is hops, maybe, but then if you add too many hops, then it doesn't taste very good.
yeah,
So
it's out of balance anyways. And most
yeah,
people are doing it with arrested fermentation, which in my opinion is very difficult to make a good non-alc with.
yeah,
Not that I'm any expert on it, but vacuum distillation is the way to go. But who can afford that kind of equipment?
yeah,
But I worry about, like, my biggest concern is something is going to happen, somebody's going to get sick, and all of a sudden we're going to get all this legislation coming down on us from the government because somebody made a bad non-alc and somebody got
yeah, yeah.
because they're not pasteurizing it. Or like draft,
Yeah.
it's the same thing with draft. Like, we've
Yeah.
all seen funky ass draft lines.
Yes.
Somebody doesn't know better. They're going to put a non-alc on a draft line, and it's just going to go 3 ways to Sunday.
Yeah, I would say there's a really good Brewers Association document about why you should avoid putting your non-alc beer on draft.
There was a very good point that the brewer from Tool did made when she did her presentation on their non-alc, which is pretty popular in Denmark, but they only do it in cans because they're like, well, if it's on draft, the possibility of accidentally serving somebody an alcoholic beer at the table is like that much higher. And like, so like the idea of bringing over a can, cracking it at the table and like giving it to them, like eliminates that error. Cause like, you don't know what somebody's, comfort or, are they completely non-alc because of religious reasons or personal reasons, or are they just trying to?
Are you putting that keg through the paasterizer? That's it, too.
Yeah,
right. It's like,
well, those European countries that have the 0 blood alcohol, you think you're fine, you drink it, you go drive, you get pulled over, you're screwed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing with these arrested fermentation ones. I'm just like, how many of these are actually 0.5% or whatever? Like, I'm not sure what it is in BC, but here we have like a plus minus 0.5%. But I think for non-alcs, it's much lower than that.
Yeah, I think it's lower for that. But I mean, at least I've heard of people where it's you just water it down to where you want it to be, 0.5%. You can get it there.
But are you making something anybody should drink or not?
I have my own opinions about non-alc beer, whether it's tasty or not. I think that's the hard time for brewers. We have a hard time with it because we're so used to drinking our beer, and like when that's the rubric, and you're trying to have this other product that's really just not the same, it's hard for it to be good. Like, I've come now to be like, okay, I know what to expect in a non-alc beer. And people that drink non-alcoholic beers often, I think, they find ones that they like. They go, this one's good, right? And I almost have more, like, I pay attention more to what they would say is good because they're the ones drinking that product. Whereas I am usually just coming into it like, okay, I'll try it, and it's usually it's lacking, right? But when you're only drinking that, then it helps.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I find the our industry is very everybody jumps on the bandwagon a little too fast. And that's like here. My biggest criticism in the city in Toronto would be like, do we really need another brewery opening up, making hazy IPAs, fruited kettle sours, and pastry stouts, and one mediocre to bad lager? Like, there's enough people in that game already. I'd love to see, like, so one of my favorite breweries in the city is a buddy of mine, True History Brewing. So he's also from the Siebel Brewery program, and
with a great Hefeweizen as well.
Yes, they have a great Hefeweizen. But my point is like they focus on lagers and Germanic styles for the most part, and that's like great to see because every other brewery is just doing all the trendy stuff. It's like we've already got Bellwoods, who's been doing that for ages, and a few other breweries that have nailed that down and have a following. We don't need 5 more of them opening up here doing various versions to various levels of quality. Like, I wish people would be a bit more creative and go out on a limb. And like, I'm not going to say, totally assassinate your idea and open a Belgian beer bar or something that nobody's going to. It's not. I would go there, but
don't get crazy.
Yeah. But just like give me something. I mean, obviously, I'm not the target audience for most of this stuff. I'm a jaded old brewer, but like, give me something to get excited about instead
Yeah.
of just like, oh, well,
Yeah.
okay, 5 different hazy IPAs. And,
No, that resonates with me. I feel that for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we're in my area where I live here in Toronto. I live in the Middle Eastern area, and within 5-minute walk of my house are 7 or 8 shawarma shops, and it's all just
Yeah.
one city block strip. And I keep seeing new ones open, and I'm just like, who walked down here and was like, you know what this area needs? Another shawarma shop. You know what we need?
Yeah.
Another hazy IPA brewery making
Yeah.
40 grams per liter dry hop beer that all tastes the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I'm 3 beers deep now. I'm getting a little
Getting a
You're
little
on your
bit.
soapbox
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So for any new brewers just getting into the industry, what words of wisdom do you have for them aside from
don't.
less hazy IPAs?
I mean, as long as you don't mind like middling pay and long hours, although it's a lot better now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
in all seriousness, I'd say like just make sure it's something you like and realize that it's not like a Willy Wonka land where you're just wandering around drinking beer out of tanks and stuff. As we all know, it's mostly cleaning and a lot of drudgery and it's hard physical labor. So as long as you go into it with a good work attitude and realize what you're getting into, I think it's a very rewarding industry. Like, how lucky are we? We turned like our hobbies into jobs. You know,
Yeah.
anytime I get a little
Totally.
bummed out or angry, I'm like, I do this, and this was a hobby of mine that I love doing, and now I make a living off of it, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I love seeing other people drinking and enjoying the product. It makes me really happy when I see a tap room full and they're all slugging back the beers. But
Yeah.
I'd say just like do
I mean,
your
it's
research.
very rewarding, like showing up at a party and someone's got like a can of your beer, or like
absolutely.
people in the tap room, or like you're like, yeah.
But I would say like my trajectory was hands-on experience first, and then I decided to go get some more formal education, and I would recommend that over going to brewing school right away, because you know it's going to give you the wrong kind of, depending what brewing school you go to, but you know it could give you the wrong kind of attitude about what you're getting into, and I think you're going to get more out of it knowing, having a previous base knowledge and having worked somewhere. Like if I went to the Siebel Doman's program just green, just being a home brewer, like I'd be a fish out of water. Like it's intense, it's fast. I don't know what other programs like the Niagara one here are like. It's a 2-year one, so I think it lasts a bit longer. But like I think you get a lot more out of it when you've got some practical experience. And then if you want to start getting more into it, you know, you can do like I did the IBD exam when I started being more interested in it. And that's a low key thing you can do at home and study and then really see about it. But I said, don't jump headfirst into anything.
Yeah.
But I would
Try it out. Try it out first.
Sorry?
Try it out first. Yeah.
Yeah, I would put practical hands-on experience over any schooling. At least do that for a year or two. And then if you find it's what you like, then you can find some avenues of higher learning and brewing. And there's tons of stuff online too. Like, join the MBAA. Look at all the technical papers that are on there. There's tons of them. I love rifling through them and finding interesting articles from various decades on all sorts of brewing knowledge and stuff. You find some gems in it.
For sure. Yeah. There's lots out there.
Yeah,
when you're not
a concise answer, but
that's fine. When you're not brewing beer, what are you doing? Are you still playing music, or what keeps you busy?
I don't play music as much anymore. Most of my free time now I spend in my garden. I have a big backyard. I love gardening. I love houseplants. I like to cook. Me and my girlfriend cook a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what takes up most of my time until winter, is just working on my garden. And I still play a bit of music, but not as much as I'd like to. Everybody's old and has families now and has moved further away. So got to find some new young whippersnappers.
That's right.
Jam with. But I love gardening. Like, funny little story, when we were at Ferdinand Malting in the Czech Republic on that trade mission trip, and there I told Aslan before you jumped on, I don't know, did you guys go to Raven when you were there?
No.
Which one did you go to? Did they take you to a maltster?
Ferdinand, and we went to another one as well.
Oh, so you went to Ferdinand as well, right? Yeah,
the one that's like across from Souffle. There's like a
Right.
small. It's kind of funny. There's like a tiny maltster, literally like across the road from Souffle, which is like this massive malt house in Czech
Yeah,
Republic.
souffle is
Yeah.
huge. But anyway, long story short, they were showing us the germination floors, and I took a few of the seeds and brought them back here, and I grow them in my backyard. And so
Cool.
So did another person on the trip, Brienne from Sacred Profane. I was just like, I stole some. We were bus buddies. I'm like, I stole some. She's like, so did I. And I got the grow and I saved the seeds. And I did that once before at a Brice maltery when I went to SIBA. We visited one of their maltsters, and it's not going to ruin this for everybody else now. They're going to listen to this and be like, oh, I can't hand out malt anymore. But yeah, I've been growing it in my backyard over the years, and I want to get enough of a batch to like do a home brew with it malted or something.
That'd be sweet. Yeah.
But I don't know if it's boyos or malts or what barley variety it is. But merging my backyard cuvee, grow some hops back here.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
No wild.
Your
no
10-meter diet.
Draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I do mostly: garden, read history. I still read a lot of old brewing books. I just got a new doozy, which is like a Bible. Actually, I have it here sitting beside me. I'm like, look at this thing. It's
whoa.
Yeah.
Nice.
I guess
I can't read it.
On the thing. It says the theory and practice and preparation of malt and fabrication of beer. It was a book written by an Austrian brewing professor, and then translated by German brewers in North America for the North American market. But it's got really big sections on adjunct brewing, or brewing the American way.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to reading through that. It's from the 1890s.
Well, 6-row action coming your way soon.
Yeah, some corn and. I mean, 2-row and 6-row nowadays are virtually the same malt.
Yeah.
If you look at it on the sheet, but yeah. Anyway,
you could probably find some historical 6-row somewhere. Someone's doing something.
Oh yeah, like we brewed when I worked at Collective, we tried to brew a version of Carling.
Okay.
And my boss insisted we get 6-row, and I showed him the COAs. I'm like, the 6-row is like got less protein than the 2-row, man. Like, it's pointless. But it was just those two and sugar. And actually, the beer turned out all right. It was like a hot beer kind of adjunct lager.
Fun. That's
sweet.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this with us, Jeff. It's been great.
It's been a lot of fun.
Nice crossing borders here to Ontario, and look at us go, Aslan. We're crossing the country.
You guys got a whole day ahead of you. It's already dark here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's almost dark here now. But
I guess you're further. You're pretty far north compared to where we are here. So people, I always forget how southern Ontario is.
Yeah.
I remember we had the
mountains don't help.
Well, the Raptors had that run, and they ended up winning the championship. But they were playing the Bucks, and I was in Milwaukee at the time, and it's all the Raptors like, we the North. I'm like, Milwaukee's way further north than Toronto.
That's true. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. So if people want to get your beer, where's the best place to pick it up locally?
I guess at the brewery, we do home delivery province-wide. Not sure how many provinces we're exporting to these days, but yeah, in Ontario, we don't really deal with the LCBO that much anymore, so it's just directly through the brewery or on tap around town. We're on a lot of accounts and a lot of bottle shops and stuff. Yeah.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Jeff. And if you want to support us and like what you hear, make sure to tell your friends about the podcast. Subscribe and follow our social accounts. Our Instagram is at Why This Beer, and on Facebook as well. Yeah. And of course, support Darren and I by buying Neighborhood and Main Street Brewing where you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess if there's any Ontarian people listening to this one, because the crossover, check out the podcast. Previous episodes, we highlight other BC brewing folks and friends that we know. So if you want to learn more about which BC brewery you got to go to on your Vancouver holiday or whenever you're coming out this way, take a listen. And thanks for being on the show, Jeff.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
sweet.